Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of The Comedian's Book of the Dead by Gary Barwin. So this is a book coming out September 26, 2026 from Book Hug Press. It's a mystical realism kind of story. I received this book from River Street Reads in exchange for a fair review. Featuring a new version of death as a character, The Comedian's Book of the Dead is a unique underworld journey. What's it about? Death is a comedian and a devoted family man, but everything falls apart when the fates choose him to guide departed souls to the beneath. Having to perform this new role erodes his humanity and causes him to do some perhaps unforgivable things. And when his only son dies by suicide, Death realizes he is likely the one to blame. Attempting the impossible, Death goes into the beneath to beg the fates to allow him to bring back his son. Naturally, things are not what they seem, and Death is then forced to reevaluate everything he knows, everything except the deep love he has for his child. So this is a really hard book to review because while I found the concept and the story itself to be inherently interesting, I had trouble connecting with the main character and especially with the humor. There are some really good things about the book, though. The concept of death as an entity being something that regular people are just assigned to become was a really interesting idea. I really do enjoy books where death is a character, such as The Book Thief and Terry Pratchett's books. That's why I requested this novel, because I was like, oh, cool, I love death as a character. The journey into the underworld and the approaches to mythical aspects, which were sort of blends of different religious mythologies, was pretty cool. If you like Orpheus, I guess, stories, or this sort of like mythical realism, you will enjoy this, though it does deal with some pretty heavy topics, especially if you are a parent, so take care. Obviously, you heard about the suicide in the jacket copy, but there's some other stuff too. Now, when it comes to humor, I'm going to admit that I don't enjoy stand-up comedy. I'll watch the odd clip here and there, if it shows up as a short on YouTube or something, but I'll never attend a stand-up routine. And I think that might be why a lot of the attempts of humor in this book just didn't work for me. Another reason it didn't work, I think, is actually generational. So I'm an older millennial, if you couldn't tell. This isn't to say generations all share the same humor or some stuff can't jump generations. My partner's dad, who is 70, and I both love The Big Lebowski, for example, and John Candy movies tend to be ones that kind of cross generations. But there is a divide generationally when it comes to approaches to humor. Boomers often use high concept absurdity, like in this book, where millennial humor tends to prefer absurdity to be hyper relatable, mundane, or absolutely bonkers level, best served while high, but still funny when not. This is why stuff like Rick and Morty or Adventure Time tends to work for my generation, but doesn't work for, say, my parents. Boomer humor tends to revolve around a structured, stable moral center, situational logic, or slapstick. So they often find these shows that I just mentioned chaotic nonsense, whereas millennials lean into the satirical deconstruction of ego and bizarre non sequiturs. Another perfect example is a book I'm going to be reviewing next week, which is Dungeon Crawler Carl. I find the book pretty damn funny because a lot of the humor is based on bizarre stuff, pop culture jokes, or Carl being exhausted, especially with Princess Donut. As opposed to this book, where the absurdity is rooted in the mythical, to me, it feels like an academic exercise rather than something funny. The highly stylized, poetry-esque prose is too emotionally detached for me to find it humorous. I'm not saying this style of humor is lesser than my preferred type of humor or anything like that, just that it's different. And again, not all people fit their generational humor pattern or are confined to it. So if this book sounds like it's right up your alley, definitely give it a shot still. Humor is extremely subjective. Unfortunately, I didn't find this book funny at all. It could also be because I didn't find the main character sympathetic. He does some very awful things, one of which ties into the tiresome I hate my wife aspects of boomer humor to an extreme degree. So I thought he was an absolutely terrible person. His son's actions are tragic, but honestly, unsurprising. I will say one fun thing about the book is that it mentions the Perseid meteor shower, which I actually watched while I was reading this. So I was reading this when I was at the cottage, and we were in a great spot to watch the meteor shower, so we watched it one night. And so it was kind of funny that we saw that, and then I was reading this book, and I was just like, oh, that's so funny. A mention of the thing that I just saw. That doesn't really matter to this book review, but if you watch my reviews generally, you realize that I go off on a lot of random tangents. It's part of my millennial humor, I guess. Anyway, thank you very much, though, to River Street for the review copy. I really do appreciate it, and I do love showcasing, Canadian content. So, yeah, if this sounds up your alley, you should totally check it out because it is an interesting book, and it is very beautifully written. So, thanks.